Live. All right, all right, all right. Once I've interviewed Matthew McConaughey, and I was waiting for him, like I was waiting for you today, and then I see the camera that is black and only the mic active, and I just hear, all right, all right, all right, and I think, okay, Matthew McConaughey is in the room, so it was
Yeah, some
very.
of those like super memorable lines. He's like a great sort of soundbite kind of person, I feel like.
Yeah, and also recently I saw him giving a speech, political speech. It's just really, some people are just really good with their job. And about jobs, I want to talk about with you today, and not only. But you said that you studied in the UK.
Yeah. So I was at Oxford for undergrad. I majored in economics. I specialized a bit in labor economics. So I've been into jobs and into the labor market for a long time, honestly.
All right. And how did you go from Oxford to New York? I mean, you just came back? It was like...
Yeah, so I was born and raised in New York. So New York's my home. I knew I wanted to sort of live my more professional life in New York and my more adult life in New York. So I wanted to get out of there for college.
Right, got it. And what did you do when you came back?
It was immediately, I started Pallet towards the end of my senior year at college. So it was right after graduating, about almost 2 years ago now. We'd started this company. And for quite some time, we were sort of, trying something out here and kind of pivoting around and trying something out there. But I've been working, really haven't had any other full-time jobs since graduating.
Right, got it. Interesting time to start, by the way, in full pandemic, I guess. It was 2 years ago. So you just got the right, you say, I'm going to start a new company right now. That was good.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because so much of my experience kind of being a tech founder has been informed by the pandemic, right? In the sense that we raised around $7 million of venture capital at this point, and I haven't been to San Francisco yet. I've never been there in person. And I think it's just sort of like a sign about how much the times are changing.
That's incredible. Is it Pallet a solo founder? Are you multiple founders?
No, so we're a founding team of 4, actually.
Right, okay.
So one person I met when I was 6 years old in lower school in New York, and then another one we went to high school with, and then someone we met in college. So it's a nice little group.
That's interesting. At least you met before launching the startup, because there are some crazy stories of founders that basically they never met, or also super tiny startups. Streamyard, for instance, I mean, they were 2 founders and they sold for 250 mil, the company. And I mean, with, I don't know, 10 people, 50 people, it was a very, very tiny startup. So it's incredibly how remotely you can do a lot. But yeah. I wanted to ask you this. I started to see Pallet used by interesting people. So which are usually, I don't know, a little bit skeptic, of using platforms. So when I start to see, I don't know, I don't want to give advertising to anyone, but I saw some interesting people and I thought, wow, I mean, they all use Pallet. I got that kind of feeling, maybe because it's my bubble, I'm tech biased. But I was wondering, how did you manage to reach such an interesting group of people that started to open their job board on Pallet?
Yeah, I mean, well, so to an extent, it was kind of like a stroke of luck, honestly. So initially what we were doing with Pallet, right, because the idea behind Pallet has always been to build this sort of like modularized recruiting network, right, where there's a bunch of little mini recruiting platforms inside of a bigger one, because I think it's much more efficient for a whole variety of reasons. But initially the way that we were doing that was we built a consumer platform first. And this was what the first thing that we were working on was, and we had the consumer platform, we called it Spotify for jobs, right? And so you'd have a bunch of little playlists of jobs that were curated around some sort of thematic structure. And the idea was that if we could take that product and scale it to a large enough user base, we would then have the cachet to have other people build on top of us, right? Hey, we have all these users, we have all this activity, you could build your own little recruiting network on top of the Pallet network, right? Or the Pallet platform. And we got introduced to Lenny Chitsky, who's a sort of angel investor, Substack writer, big Twitter audience, like really prolific guy. One of the de facto, I would say, like leaders on the topic of product management, particularly.
Right.
And I was sort of like, hey, do you want to come and curate this list on our platform or whatever I was talking about? And he said no. He said he had no interest in doing that at all. But he did need sort of a back end built for all of the recruiting stuff that he was doing, and he wanted like a full suite sort of recruiting toolkit. And can we do that? And I remember just being in the call on that moment, and it was not what we did at all. But sort of thinking to myself that like, hey, this is a really big opportunity here, and we could put the, forget about the consumer platform. Let's just go right to the meat of the structure, which is other people building. And so I said, yes, of course we could do that. And I told the team that we have 2 months to get a new product ready and new product ready to go. And we were lucky enough to get introduced to Lenny in that situation. And I think once Lenny launched and once Lenny started doing it, the social proof started to build quite quickly. And we just kept on getting introduced to more of these people, and they decided to run with us, I guess.
Yeah, it's very interesting approach, I think. I see, for instance, all the content creators. If I think about all the content creators that I know, or if I think when I say, look, I need to find a designer, if I post on my social media, I get, I don't know, thousands of email, and it's so difficult to manage all of this stuff, and then you start to use platforms. But you always think, gosh, I'm really in the middle when you have a large community between people who are looking for a job and also people who want to find those ones, but you don't know how to match them. So I think it's genius to go through the influencers or through people who has already a community.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think, kind of when you look at the sort of history of how these tech recruiting platforms have evolved over time, really that first iteration was obviously like LinkedIn, Indeed, these big aggregators, right? Where they sort of said, let's get everyone into one bucket. And obviously those were incredibly financially successful. But they didn't really do much to improve the efficiency of the market, right? Like, I think the best way to look at how efficient a given market is, like how strong are the service providers, like the staffing agencies and so on and so forth. And if you look at like the top 10 revenue earning like recruiting companies in today's world, like the first 10 on that list, first 9 on that list are all traditional legacy staffing agencies. They all earn more than LinkedIn or Indeed or these sort of modern tech players. And then so what you have is the sort of second iteration of these labor marketplaces in tech was what we call like a verticalized labor marketplace, right? Where they sort of said, hey, we see that the big ones are still like pretty inefficient. So we're going to effectively build a tech-enabled kind of staffing agency, right? People are going to apply and they're going to give us a lot of their information, and we're going to find out what they like and what they're interested in, and then we'll be able to better match them. And generally speaking, those worked at least moderately well, and they were quite more efficient than the big aggregators. But then they ran into the problem of user acquisition problems in recruiting. And this is like the death sentence for almost all recruiting companies, which is that if you're building a recruiting specific company, all of your users are going to churn every 3 or 4 months, right? Because someone wants a job in January, in April they don't need a job anymore. And so we look at these different communities, we look at these different influencers, these different content creators as kind of marrying the best of both worlds, right? Where they have this network that's around them that will still surround them, whether they're looking for a job or not looking for a job, but they also hold that sort of trust and that curation and that understanding of their audience that you could get with a more kind of hands-on service.
And also, I think the creator is a filter for you for a specific kind of community, because if I talk to my community, you already know they're interested in digital business and Web3. So you already know that it's not like a random, or I don't know, Pomp is about, crypto, Bitcoin. You already know that kind of audience is there. And in this case, Pallet is... what's the business model behind? Is a revenue share with the creator or with the influencer? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's revenue share with the content creator, with the community leader, and we really have two sort of models on that revenue share. We take a relatively small percentage when the content creator brings in their own business and their own customer, but we also do a lot of that work to get people customers, right? Because there are a lot of people in a content creator's audience who want to hire, but there's still a sales process. There's still you still have to answer those questions. And very often the people who are in your audience aren't necessarily the heads of recruiting, right? They might be a COO, or they might be, a chief of staff or some sort of product manager, but the people that really control that budget, the heads of talent, the heads of recruiting, we found that we often have to go and sort of sell to directly.
Right. So basically, if I think, I don't know, about a job board that is about, let's say, Web3, you, as the, like, let's say, the owner of the job board, on one side bring his community in, on the other side he has to look for, you know, Web3 companies that want to invest and find people, so they want to spend some money to get their ads out there, and then you get a cut of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like the interesting challenge is that some people don't really like to do the finding the company part. I think not everyone likes doing sales, and so we've started to take a greater and greater role in sort of handling the business side, right? And we're just sort of, you know, the goal, right, is that you could just focus entirely on your community, entirely on your audience, providing value to them, and we will make sure that you get in front of really cool businesses. And obviously, you decide who could still sort of advertise on your platform, but you know, we want to build up this kind of network of companies.
So it's basically like Shopify, but for job boards, basically. So instead of having your e-commerce, you have your job board, and you can build an additional revenue source from there. Plus, is a useful service for your community, which is really, really important, because you help people to find jobs, which is absolutely interesting.
Exactly. I think it's just the alignment is really strong, right? It's like win-win-win. Everyone wins.
What's the situation with remote working at the moment? In your, if you should take a picture at the moment, since you see so many jobs, so different job boards, what's the situation?
Yeah, I mean, so I think remote work is almost like the default that we see now. We very rarely see companies that are not hiring remotely. Pallet, we have an office in New York. We also have a couple people that work remotely. And I think what we're getting to now at this point is, yeah, I mean, it's really completely taken over. That being said, there's now kind of like counter trend going on, which is some of the earlier stage startups, some of the sort of smaller companies really want to hire in person because they want to be next, you know, there's 10, 7 people, and they all want to be in a room together. By the time you get to the later stages, by the time you get to the Series B, the Series C, it's hard to find a company that hires exclusively in person now. Right,
got it. Well, what's your main focus at the moment? I mean, because on one side, obviously, you have to try to scale. On the other side, my feeling, at least I don't know, because we never spoke before, but my feeling from, you know, an external perspective is a quality product. You know, it's like a quality job board, and not everyone have their own palette. You know, it's like scaling, but also with an attention to product. I don't know if it's right or it's just my perception.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been very careful about letting people, you know, granting access to people to run their own palette thus far. And I think it's sort of 2 reasons, like you said. One, we want to ensure that everyone who does it sort of has that level of quality and can really provide a good experience. And then 2, we want to also make sure that we can serve them accurately, right, and actively, right? So if we say, hey, we've just gone and done a deal with this sort of big Web3 startup, and they're going to be, you know, spending a lot of money on the platform, would you like to listen to their roles here? And the content creator we've onboarded is focused on, I don't know, architecture, right? It means that we can't really serve them too well, right? And so we want to be able to stay focused. We want to be able to stay supportive of the entire ecosystem.
What are the main sectors that you try to focus on?
I mean, really, right now it's traditional tech and crypto. And I know a lot of people maybe consider those crypto to be part of tech, but from what we found, crypto is an entirely different beast. So classic sort of Web 2 and then Web 3 type companies are definitely like our largest customer segment.
I see. How do you solve? I'm curious, Kai. So stop me whenever you. I'm just curious, you know, to understand how do you think about these problems. But I remember years ago I had a blog networks. So we had 250 weblogs about different topics. And one problem that we had at the moment was that we were trying to select. Imagine, instead of trying to create job boards, we were trying to find good bloggers focusing on a topic. I don't know, politics, you know, whatever. And one problem was that we reached a certain level where we said, okay, we already have, I don't know, 5 bloggers in the tech sector. What do we do? I mean, if we add other ones, the previous bloggers are a bit cross because then it's too crowded, that sector. So how do you see this part of the problem? I don't know if it's a problem you thought about.
Yeah, I mean, so in our case, it tends to be a little bit less. It's a little bit less competitive, right? Because Pallet's never the main tool. Like no one is a Pallet exclusive content creator community, right? Like it's always a layer in their stack, right? So you sort of say, hey, I've built up this audience, right? And the differentiating thing is always the audience. And you can sort of plug Pallet in there to just provide value for them, get access to these really cool companies. And I think ultimately right, in our case, the results are not so directly impacted by who else is on the platform, right? In the sense that, you could have 2 different product management community leaders, but they have slightly different audiences, right? And talk about slightly different things, and they track slightly different groups of people. So there's not going to be too much overlap there, right?
Awesome.
And so that makes things just generally a little bit less competitive, I'd say. I think as long as we provide people value and get people, get our content creators in front of businesses, get money into their pocket, provide value to their audience, then it's all good.
Got it. On the other side, would be interesting to see some collabs from between, I don't know, Michael Saylor, CZ, and I don't know, someone else, Crypto Jobs. You would have like 95% of the audience interested in Bitcoin, for instance, So
yeah, I think that would be really interesting. And we've definitely explored a lot with the idea around like affiliates and, like let's say like Lenny brings in, one customer, and that customer goes and spends money on a different content creator's Pallet as well. Maybe like we could have like some sort of revenue share model where Lenny would see some of that cash flow come his way as well.
Would be interesting to see Elon Musk with Pallet. Imagine how many people. Imagine if Elon say, by the way, not only Dogecoin, now I support Pallet and I have my Pallet. Imagine how many jobs he could be able to. That would be incredible. You should.
In our little tech Twitter bubble, at the very least, he's definitely kind of the top of the mountain right now. So that would be insane.
But I mean, I'm curious to see, I think about Gary Vee in New York. I mean, people who has a large audience, they could really become an immense, gigantic job board business, very easily, I think.
No, absolutely. Right. And it's just about sort of, and it's interesting because with the people that have the much larger audiences, you can even get a team to manage it, right? Like when we've worked with like sort of big enough people, like oftentimes they're not even doing the sales. They bring in someone else to do the sales or the marketing, whatever it might be. So yeah, it would be cool, definitely.
Interesting. I'll keep an eye when you have the Elon announcement. Binance yesterday had Ronaldo NFT, so I mean that's that was a big news.
Yeah,
I saw a lot of tech companies firing people recently. Everyone because of the macroeconomic situation. Did you feel any impact on the platform? Is this something that how do you react to this recession scenario?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely hiring is down on a net level. And of course, when hiring is down, we're going to feel the impacts. We are sort of small enough right now that the current slowdown, at the very least, I think is manageable, because what you're seeing really is a big divide between winners and losers in this market. Like there's some people that are laying off their staff, and it's really unfortunate to see pausing hiring entirely, really grinding to a halt. And then there's other companies that are sort of doing business as usual, right? They're hiring at the same pace that they were before. They might even be accelerating. All right, talking about Binance, right? Like I think they just announced they're hiring for over 1,500 positions right now. Whereas Coinbase, on the other hand, just laid off 20% of its staff. So what we're seeing at the very least is this sort of like, hey, there's some people that are winning in the market, and there's some people that are really losing in the market. And in our case, that's actually better than everyone slowing down hiring by a little bit across the board. So we could focus our attention on the customers that are going strong and that still want to find great people, and in a climate like this, there's kind of more great people out there than normal.
Got it. What do you think is the next step for Pallet? I mean, is like the next round? Is it what's the biggest challenge that you think if we overcome this challenge, then we can go on a different to play on a different league?
Yeah, I mean, so this is really I think the most interesting problem that we're dealing with right now is, we started off very much building in the kind of Shopify Substack model, kind of like what you're saying, right? Like, hey, every pallet is its own entirely siloed ecosystem. From top to bottom, it's an end-to-end funnel the entire way. That works really well for candidates, and candidates really, really love that experience because they're sort of part of this, like this sort of curated network. They get this really kind of personalized feeling with the community or the content creator there. But for recruiters, it's kind of annoying to them, right? Like they want to go and find 10 or 12 different pallets that are good for them. They want to be able to track everything kind of easily. They don't want to have to deal with going to a bunch of different websites each time and getting the receipts from each of those individual websites. So recruiters really want the ability to say, like, I need a tool where I can manage my workflow on your platform. And so we always have to balance, right? Like, hey, like we don't ever want to just open it up and just say, hey, this is all the people on Pallet right now that you can see at once, because I think it tends to kind of ruin some of the strengths that we hold. But on the other hand, we do have to build tools for these recruiters to do their job and do their job more efficiently if we ever want to become something more than a kind of niche toolkit for them, right? Like if we want to be a thing where our long-term bet, of course, is hey, long-term, the amount of people who are on Pallet is going to outpace the amount of people on any one single network, because we have all of these sort of micro networks across every platform combined. And if we want that to be the case, right, then we need to be a big part of a recruiter's workflow. Not necessarily replacing LinkedIn or anything like that, but we need to be a meaningful chunk. So I think right now, kind of unifying this experience for the recruiter side in a way that adheres to our strengths still is a big thing to solve for us, and it's a fun thing to solve as well.
But do you think that the solution will be a sort of dashboard where if I am, I don't know, Procter & Gamble, I just have a dashboard and I say, all right, I want Python developer who is a genius, that's it. And then from this dashboard, I can, let's say, post my job offer to 50 different pallets, and then I get a unified result so that I don't have to go. Or it's like a pallet concierge where you offer a service and you say, right, we're going to do it for you, we did it for you. How do you think will happen?
So right now we're doing it concierge style. Just because, as we're trying to learn the market and we're trying to learn what's really of value, what's really not of value, it's quite concierge right now. We still give them the interface at the end of it, but we sort of a company could come to us and say, hey, I really want to find this type of person. We'll say, okay, cool. We're looking at our kind of ecosystem. Here are the ones that we think would be a really great fit for you. With one sort of flat bundled rate, you could post all of them at once. Eventually though, obviously it's got to be a bit more scalable than that. So some sort of dashboard type of interface is probably what we're going to end up looking at. Right. But yeah, it's something that we're actively working on now.
Do you think that the revenues generated by a single creator or I don't know, influencer, I don't know how you call it in your jargon in Pallet, but it's just nice to have amount of money, or there are creators that can really generate a lot of money just by using a job board?
Yeah, I mean, so we've seen anywhere from people that are doing sort of on the low end of the spectrum, a few thousand, $10,000 a year in revenue, which is sort of like a nice kind of chunk of change, to the high end, people are making close to $1 million a year. So I think it could definitely become a meaningful part of that sort of revenue stream, and we've seen it thus far.
Interesting. And do you think that, for instance, do you see the same, let's say, conversion rate on like an influencer on TikTok that have 3 million followers, but maybe they're not so interested then in committing, or is more effective, someone who has 100,000 followers, but is very, very focused on his niche? Do you see big differences there?
Definitely the focused.
Right.
You could even have a community of 2,000 people, right? Right. And if those, we work with one community called the Old Girls Club, which is quite a small niche community, but it's all women in tech with 3, 4, 5 years of experience at the very least. That's a really valuable niche in the world of recruiting at the very least. So definitely the two things that are most important are sort of focus on the niche and how important that niche is, like / engagement with the audience, right? And then also how engaged and owned your distribution is, right? So someone on TikTok is actually probably 3 million followers on TikTok, I would say is not even necessarily as good. I mean, 3 million is a lot, but
Yeah.
1 million on TikTok, I would say, is not even as good as 100,000 on Substack, right? Because Substack is so powerful because you have that email distribution list that you own. You know that whatever you put in sort of your newsletter is going to be seen by at least 30, 40,000 of those people. And that's really powerful, right? You're not beholden to the kind of algorithm that's going on here. So kind of focus on the niche / engagement overall, and then how owned that distribution is. Tend to be the two most important factors that we've seen thus far.
I was reading yesterday about Shopify latest announcements, and one big focus that they have. I also interviewed the NFT head of NFTization of Shopify, and one big trend in e-commerce that they see is what they call the token-gated commerce, where you basically go on Shopify, you connect your wallet, and then based on the NFTs that you have, you see different content, different offers, and so on. Are you experimenting with NFTs on Pallet? What's your take there?
So, like, yes and no, I guess. It's more important for us to be able to adhere to the rules of the community than to necessarily let them do new things, if that makes sense, right? So if the innate community is kind of an NFT gated one, right? Maybe it's some sort of DAO where members get some sort of NFT like membership card. I do think it'd be really cool to have like an NFT gated palette, right? Where sort of say, hey, anyone that holds this can automatically get access for free, or can automatically put their candidacy forward, or whatever it might be. And there's a lot of really cool tools out there that let you do that. But we don't necessarily want to don't really want to have to worry about building native community experiences on the platform itself. It's much more important for us to be able to say, hey, you got added to my palette as a candidate. Now you have access to this private Discord channel, right? Or, you'll get this NFT, or you could use this NFT, rather than enabling kind of net new functionality. So we've definitely been exploring with it in the case of, because we work with a lot of Web3 native different communities. So have been exploring, but it wouldn't necessarily be a thing that's applied across the board for us.
I see. Man, I wish you the best of luck, and hope to see you soon in UK or somewhere in the world, or just in the metaverse, because now it's the metaverse. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me on.